Hi, my name is Mishan Stroman. My speech today will be about whether airlines should be or should not be allowed to install electronic stun guns in the cockpit of all its aircrafts. My personal preference is that airlines should be allowed to install electronic stun guns in the cockpit of all its aircrafts. Imagine yourself in mid-flight on an airplane, and a group of men begin to try to invade the cockpit to take over the airplane, and you then realize that you are in the middle of a terrorist attack. You have passengers screaming and scared for their life, but as soon as they pry the cockpit door open, they are tased and then restrained by airline officials on board. The airline then has an emergency landing and no one gets hurt. The terrorists are successfully restrained and detained by proper authorities. Now, the Transportation Security Administration says non-lethal stun guns could be allowed on airplanes as another layer of security. They're already allowed to carry guns in the cockpit, but many pilots say that's not enough to keep aviation as safe as it should be. They want police-like authority to holster a weapon all day long, whether they're at the controls, riding in the back of a plane, or eating lunch in a terminal. We see electrical shock devices as having the potential to contribute to our layers of security. But when it comes to deploying any weapons system on an aircraft, we owe it to the traveling public to make sure we do it safely. TSA spokesman Robert Johnson said. United and Mesa are the only airlines that have asked the TSA for permission to arm pilots with stun guns. Congress created TSA after the September 11 attacks and gave it the power to decide whether to allow pilots to carry guns or non-lethal weapons. After the TSA decided against arming pilots, Congress overrode the Bush administration and enacted a law allowing pilots to volunteer to carry guns. Several dozen have been trained and carrying guns in the cockpit. Representative John Mica, chairman of the House of Representatives of Aviation Subcommittee, supports whatever means are necessary to ensure the safety and security of the flying public, said his spokesman, Gary Burns. John Mazer, spokesman for the Airline Pilots Association, said stun guns can make a cockpit more secure, but are not a replacement for lethal weapons. This information can be found at www.cbsnews.com. I personally feel stun guns would temporarily disarm those who try to hijack the airplanes while in air. I think that this might stop some of the terrorist activities. Terrorists tend to prey on what they think is a weak entity, but if word got around that certain airlines had protection against such means as this, those airlines would be less likely to become victims. Not only that, not all acts of terrorism require an individual to be shot. The stun gun is an effective tool to detain an individual without causing harm to other passengers or damage to the aircraft. Just like training has been put in place for pilots to have guns in the cockpit, I'm sure with proper training, stun guns will only benefit the airline's overall safety. However, despite how I feel, U.S. commercial passenger airline pilots will not be allowed to carry firearms during flights, but they may be permitted to carry stun guns or other non-lethal to thwart terrorists, a top federal transportation official said. The airline industry opposes arming pilots, citing the possible threat to passengers and crew, and maintains that cockpits crews should focus solely on flying planes safely. Some aviation security experts also expressed concern that stray gunshots could damage the fuselage and possibly cause a crash. Some senators also favor arming pilots. New fortified cockpit doors installed on all commercial aircraft will allow pilots to remain safe during a potential terrorist attack while engaging in flight maneuvers that upset the terrorist equilibrium. The government already has told us that if terrorists take control of one of our cockpits, they will send military aircraft to shoot down the airliner and all of its crew and passengers, Worth said. In the face of such choices, we do not understand why these same government officials refuse to give pilots a last chance to prevent such a tragedy. This information can be found at www.articles.philly.com. Added David Stempler, President of the Air Travelers Association, a Washington-based passenger advocacy group. If hijackers are able to force themselves into the cockpit, all that pilots have to prevent the plane from being turned into a cruise missile is a crash axe, a flashlight, and a flight manual. That is not enough to protect airline passengers and people on the ground from a huge catastrophe. This information can be found at www.cnn.com. So in conclusion, airlines should be allowed to install electronic stun guns in the cockpit of all its aircrafts. It will only benefit the airline's overall safety, and it adds another layer of security. Thank you.